Hi, my name is Allison and this is my podcast. It's called When the Dog Bites. And what happened to me is last April, the dog bit me. You can see my scars still. But a funny thing happened. My life actually turned upside down in the best way. And all I want to do is talk to people about their own crazy thing that happened, their own dog bite, and then their stories of resiliency. So come on in, we're gonna get real, we're gonna get vulnerable, and I promise you, you will leave inspired and knowing that you can do hard things too. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of When the Dog Bites with your host, Allison, where we are diving into stories in resiliency. It's pretty much my favorite thing to talk about ever, and today we have an amazing guest. This is one of my favorite people in the whole world. She's also my neighbor. We're also sitting inside of her bookstore, which we will dive into. It's called Whose Books. But before we bring her on, let me give you a bio of this amazing guest. Claudia Vega is the founder of Whose Books, a social impact indie bookstore in Dallas's Oak Cliff neighborhood, and the nonprofit ARCO, Activating Reading Communities Organization. She is committed to eradicating book deserts and fostering a vibrant, inclusive reading culture in Dallas. With over 20 years of experience in public education, Claudia, I said her name back and forth. It's actually pronounced Claudia, right? I'll say it right moving forward. Thank you. Continues to enrich her community by curating positive reading experiences and connecting new and seasoned readers through community-centered literary events that celebrate diverse authors and ideas. Y'all, you are in for a treat. Let's go ahead and get started. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm honored.
I mean, it is your space.
It is really cool to see it like this.
Yeah. Right? Uh-huh. It's my favorite place to record podcast episodes.
Oh, I'm telling you, you're motivating us to take the leap and do our own podcast too.
Okay. I mean, I can't even imagine. You could interview all the people that come in through every author. It'd be so cool.
Yeah, it would be fun.
Okay. So let's back up. First of all, tell everyone, I got to read your bio, which is so impressive. Tell everyone from your voice kind of who you are and what led you to, Oak Cliff in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Oak Cliff.
Oh, you know what? I knew that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, an OG.
Yeah. So my parents were first generation on their families to go to college. And so my mom was from a little bitty town in South Texas called Moore, Texas. And my dad was from Haskell, Texas. But they both ended up going to college in Denton at UNT and TWU. Okay. And so they met there. And then after they met, they married, were looking for careers as educators. And they ended up working for Dallas ISD. And they really believed that you needed to live in the neighborhood that you worked in. Oh, right? I love that. Yes. And so they started off teaching in Oak Cliff schools. And so that meant that they bought their first home, right, here in Oak Cliff. So not too far from here, just off of Hampton. And so they worked in education and had us, and we grew up here, and it has always been our home.
Yeah. So I know you said they were educators. I often tell people, if they're friends with me, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met, truly ever. Did they spark your interest in education from an early age, or how did that come about?
So I never wanted to be an educator because they were educators, right?
No.
It's kind of I loved that they were teachers, and I loved that we had the same schedule and we had summers off and spring break, all of those things. Those were that's how it was supposed to be. That's how I grew up, right? And seeing my mom and dad grade papers, and my mom I went to the same elementary school where my mom was a teacher. And so I used to go to school early with her and wash the transparencies, it was the old, right?
On the overhead?
Yes, from the overhead projectors. And I thought it was the best thing to go and wash it all off and get the vis-a-vis markers all over you.
Should we explain what that is to anyone younger listening?
Yes. So before there was these nice big smart screens, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's this old kind of box projector that has a kind of a lamp on top of it. And you would put a clear transparency is what it was called. And you could write on it, and teachers would use that to then project what they were writing, math problems, writing out sentences up on the board, right? Yeah. It was so cool.
Oh, yeah. I haven't thought about an overhead projector in probably 20 years. Yeah. So thank you for that blast from the past.
So, but we were always dependent. This is a kid's mind, right? This is all kids' logic. On the 15th of the month.
Okay.
Because teachers got paid once a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so, they still do. It's really antiquated. Wow. Okay. And so I always remember like the 15th being the magical, like, oh my God, it's payday. But, it would run out. It was like, no, you got to wait till the 15th. You got to wait till the 15th. So in my kid mind, right?
Yeah.
Like it really sucked to be a teacher because you had to wait till the 15th for everything. So in my kid mind, I never wanted to be a teacher.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Then how did you end up becoming the principal of Sunset?
I know. So my undergraduate degree is actually in journalism.
Okay.
And I went to school at UNT, studied broadcast journalism, and worked in the industry for a while, just doing production assistant, writing, all kinds of, cool stuff. But my old principal, he was my principal when I was in high school, had been promoted over the years, and he was like assistant superintendent, and reached out to me and said, hey, there is a position for a journalism teacher at your old high school, at your alma mater, which was Sunset, right? You really, we could use someone to come in, build the program. You'd be great with the kids at building relationships with them. Just do it for a couple years, help us get it, off the floor. And then you can go back and do whatever you want to do with your career, right? You really kind of milked it, the guilt trip of give back. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can do that. And it was at the same time that I was in my first marriage. I was recently had found out that I was pregnant. At that time, I was working day break shifts at Channel 8 as a news production assistant. Yeah, it was crazy. And so I was like, I can't work this schedule being, pregnant and the baby. So I was like, yeah, maybe a teacher schedule would be good at first and it'd give me a chance. It's like, I can do it for a couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. So I did it for a couple of years. Went in, I was teaching at Sunset, literally 2 years. I was like, that's it. I said 2 years, right? And then at the end of the 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm done. And I went on to go work for the city of Dallas, and opened up the Latino Cultural Center that's off of Live Oak. It's a beautiful cultural center.
You opened that?
I was on the team that helped to open it.
Okay.
I didn't literally open it, but I was on the team that helped to open it.
I did
it was
not
a
know
huge
that, though.
initiative.
That's amazing.
And I was like one small person on the team, but it was such a big learning experience because I learned, so many different things about, what it takes to garnish community support, the grant writing that went into it, the fundraising that went into it, the project management. From construction all the way to when the doors opened, right? Wow. And so there were so many. It was such a wonderful learning experience for me, and I really enjoyed it. And I did it, and I really continued to do that. And at the same time, there was something in my heart that was pulling me back to missing working with the youth and the kids.
Okay.
And so I was like, I think I'm going to go back into education.
What year was this?
This would have been early 2000s.
Okay.
Because my oldest daughter was born in 2001.
Okay.
And so I would say probably about 2004, somewhere around there, right? It's all a blur. And I ended up getting back into the teaching field.
Okay. Did you go back to Sunset?
No. Where did I go? I worked at a couple of other schools. I also went and worked for Carrollton Farmers Branch. During all this time span, there was a divorce, and the second child, divorce, and like, let me restart, kind of relocate. So I moved to Carrollton Farmers Branch, gave me an opportunity to just kind of like, redefine what I wanted things to look like, and also kind of work for a different district and see what education looked in other parts of the city, right?
Is this the house that had the pool?
No, that was in girl. It's been like, there's so much.
I remember the house that had the pool because every summer I'm like dying.
Yes.
I'm like, I wish you still had the pool.
Yeah, that was later. That was after.
Got it. Okay.
But long story short, this little thing of I'm only going to do 2 years ended up turning into a career of over 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I was really, really drawn into, when I was at Sunset, I was really surprised that you could get to high school and that there was so many gaps in learning, right? Like, didn't know how to write complete sentences. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go teach middle school and I'm going to like figure things out. Then I went to middle school and I'm like, oh, they're getting to middle school and they don't know the difference between like certain things. I was like, I'm going to go teach at elementary school. So then I went and taught in elementary school. Of course. So I taught at all 3 levels.
Wow.
And in teaching at all 3 levels, I got to see a lot of patterns. I got to see, where gaps were in teacher supports and student supports, just really in like, the entire thing as a system.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make more impact. And so then that's when I decided to go back to school and to get my master's in educational leadership and public policy.
Okay.
And one of the principals that I was working for at that time had really, really kind of mentored me and gave me opportunities while I was still a classroom teacher to take on some leadership roles and to kind of just took me under her wing and, taught me a lot of things. And then that's how I ended up becoming a principal. So it was then the principal of what was at the time Eduardo Mata Elementary School in East Dallas.
Okay.
But we went on to become the first school of choice for Dallas ISD, and we opened up Mata Montessori, which was pretty significant because it was the first public Montessori school that did not have testing criteria.
Wow.
To get in. So it was a really great accomplishment. And now the district has multiple of them, like all over the city. And then when I was kind of done at elementary school, I was like, I'm ready for another challenge. I was like, I think I can be a high school principal now. Yeah. And we're talking about 2000 kind of teens now, right? 13, 14. There was an opportunity to interview for a high school principalship, and I was interviewing for Townview Law Magnet, which was at, the big Townview Magnet Center here.
Is that the one TAG or something?
Yeah, okay, it's part of TAG and all of those. And that went really well, and I was recommended for the position. But the assistant superintendent at the time was like, no, we can put other candidates there. We have an opening for Molina High School, which is a huge 5A school, and Sunset High School, which is another 5A school. And they're both Oak Cliff high schools, really big. And then she was like, pick one of these. If you're ready to be a principal, then... Now, Townview Magnet is like a small school of like 1,000 kids, not maybe. And then the high schools that we're talking about there is over 2,000 students, right?
Wow.
And so she was like, if you're ready to be a high school principal, then you got to pick one of these.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay.
So that was a lot.
That was incredible. I learned more about you just now than I have in the last 7 years of knowing you. But it's so funny because it's like, okay, having babies and a full-time job and a divorce and all of that is enough of like, that's a wild story on its own. Yeah. But like, you did all of that. You were the first to open the Latina Cultural Center and then the Montessori and different things. Like, you are unstoppable. It's incredible just to like, oh my gosh, you're incredible. But talk to us about when things got wild during COVID.
Yeah.
What it was like to be a principal during COVID.
Absolutely.
I would love to learn about that.
Yeah. So oddly enough, so right before that year, that 2020, you might remember, I was already kind of throwing the idea around of like, we're hitting my 20-year anniversary in the field. I don't know that what my trajectory was going to be to continue to like move forward if I wanted to lead in a different way. And so I was playing with the idea of opening the bookstore. So the plan was that year that I was going to, it was going to be my last year, and I was going to resign, and then I was going to take some time to do some research and figure out what it would take to open the bookstore. And then spring break happened.
And then the world shut down.
So it was a crazy day. So this is probably, this is probably the part that you don't hear. So it was the Friday before spring break, that week, right before spring break, that all these kind of like rumblings were coming in across the news. We were starting to see all the things that were happening. There was questions of like, is this really going to hit us? What are we going to expect?
Oh, I have goosebumps. Oh my gosh, yes.
It was just all these things. We had a lot of stuff going on. The Friday before spring break on campus, we had, there's a magazine, a kind of a trade magazine called Education Week, right? Goes to educators all over the country. And they were at the campus, and they were doing a feature on our students. Because we had started a new program where the students had designed like homeroom classes to teach social emotional learning. The kids had come up with the curriculum. They had teachers who were supporting them. It was a really, really big initiative. And so they were there interviewing them. It's like a national magazine on campus doing that. Friday before spring break is also historically called Senior Skip Day.
Okay.
And it's an unauthorized day, but historically for years and years and years, right? Seniors take it as their day to skip school, right? And they go and do stuff. And of course,
like
it's
pranks,
not ever
like
approved by us. We had an emergency meeting that morning, and they were like, every single one of your students need to go home with a laptop. All of your teachers, everyone needs to leave this campus by the end of the day, fully equipped to possibly go remote. And like all this happened like within less 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And so they're like, we're delivering laptops to your school, use like first, go through all your rooms and see what's available, pull them, inventory them. Whatever's missing, we're going to bring some more. Like it was all of this like madness. The school district.
The school district.
Right.
Okay.
The school district. And
we have 24 hours.
Yeah, it was
Or
probably
8.
less. It was probably less than 24 hours.
Oh.
We were fortunate we were one of the fortunate schools because it just happened to be that week we got a delivery of almost 1,500 Chromebooks because we were going to start transitioning into using one-to-one in the classroom, right?
Oh my God.
And so
like, look at that. Like
I know,
actually
it was
have
crazy.
Covered my body right now.
So it was like, it was wild. We were like, okay, everybody, any teachers that had off periods, teacher assistants, our tech, anybody and everybody who was on our team, we pulled everybody that was available. We're like, let's inventory serial numbers, all of these things, all of these laptops, right? 2,500 students, give or take. And account for them. We needed to create all of these forms for them to acknowledge that they were receiving the laptops. At the same time, we have the national, magazine there running a story on our students. At the same time, half of my seniors are missing, like they're, as they are everywhere in the district because it's the, unofficial Senior Skip Day. And so we started just calling. We did like all of these things and told all the seniors, I don't care where your friends are, they need to come back up to school and they need to pick up their laptops. But everybody needs to have a laptop.
Oh my gosh.
And then it wasn't just laptops, it was also hotspots too, right? And so it was insane. But somehow we did it.
Of course.
Had an amazing team of faculty and staff of 192 employees. And all together, and even some parent volunteers, we were able to get, I would say, about 90% of the laptops assigned and ready to go when they were leaving that day. They left. We went on spring break. We never really went on spring break. My leadership team and I were already creating a plan B. Like, if we have to go into online learning, what is it going to look like? And we spent our entire spring break building a platform for it, and we all learned how to create Google Sites and classrooms and the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. And then we all kind of got the news that, there's going to be a delay to school starting.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we had some emergency meetings, and it was like, okay, here's what you're going to do. Thankfully, our team had already kind of got the ball rolling, so we didn't feel 100% behind. But the logistics of it were fast and furious, and that was the easy part.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because the hard part came after. The hard part came when the illnesses started coming in. And where we had to be certified as test administrators, for COVID, and having to get food to students. And not only students, to our faculty members. A lot of times they encountered other hardships too. And so we were running completely virtual school, but we had so many students that were falling off the radars, right?
Yeah.
So we created teams where groups of teachers had assigned students that they had to check in with. We were doing home visits, but like from the curb, right? And seeing, what do you need? Some of them were without phones altogether, right? Delivering hotspots to them, assessing what kind of needs they had when it came to food and, all other types of, just daily necessities. And then
for how many students?
About 2,400 students.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Why does no one talk more about this and like how hard this was?
I think we were just ready. Like, we were so happy that we all survived, right? Like, the thinking back on it is sometimes too much. And then we started to lose students and teachers and to the illness. And it was devastating. It was devastating. And there's nothing in what you study to be a principal, or even 20 years in education, that is a guidebook to prepare you for that, right? But to get on the phone with a parent and to find out, that there's been immediate loss in the household.
Oh my gosh.
We had some students that really struggled with mental health and that took their lives during the time period. We had a teacher who passed. We had one employee it was a multi-generational household. And in that household, they probably had about 6 or 7 adults, right? 4 out of the 6 adults had passed from COVID.
Gosh.
I had one student who lost her mother, her father, her brother, and her sister-in-law was hospitalized. And then she was trying to take care of the younger nieces and nephews.
And this is just a couple stories of 2,400.
Yeah. And this is just, and these are just a few, right? Like, there were so many people who were impacted in so many ways. And then as a leader, trying to
I can't even imagine.
Stay positive, right?
I knew you during that time
build them. Yeah,
too.
It was tough.
Yes.
And then we were packing food for them. We had lines of, we'd go in. So I'd have like classroom observations, virtual classroom observations, parent conferences, all these kinds of all the things that you would do in a regular school day, but finding ways to do it hybrid or virtually, and then going to the cafeteria to help the cafeteria team.
Were they in person?
Yes, because they're considered essential staff, and principals ended up becoming essential staff too. And even though students and teachers were at home, most of the time the principals were on campus. I would be on campus, and my family was at home. doing their lessons, but I was on campus.
Wow.
Because we still had to be available at that time. We then got, I don't even remember what they called it, commissioned to trained and administer COVID testing.
Of course.
So
Of course. Like,
not
what
only
else?
were we that, we were a COVID testing site. And me and a few other of my team members, my assistant principals, would have to test employees, family members, community members. So constantly putting ourselves,
At risk. So how long after, 2020, did you go back the following year?
I went back. Yeah, I went back. And we transitioned into what was the hybrid model at that point, because they had some choices, and navigated, getting teachers back in. And we had a lot that had autoimmune diseases. And there was a lot of navigation with that, with the district, with employees, with how we would do it. Yeah.
Even like disinformation and
disinformation,
like, the teachers
yes,
and what they were saying.
Yeah, and then we would have to, we would also have to do the tracking, right? So like if someone was sick, then like when I got COVID, right? Like, and I got COVID, and then I'd had to report everybody who I was in round with. And then they had to, like, it was so much stuff.
I'm tired just like listening.
I'm getting worn out talking about
it.
it.
Okay. Oh my gosh. We can, this is like a, wow.
But we ended up coming through it. And there was a lot of loss and a lot of heartbreak. And at the same time, I think we had a phenomenal team and community that they continued to push through, right? And we did okay. We came out okay on the other side.
Okay. You are the most resilient human. It's so funny. I lived across the street from you and didn't understand the impact of what you were going through every day.
Yeah,
like,
it was
I was
crazy.
in my scary bubble, and like you're like with a newborn, but like you had your bubble and your home, and then all these people that counted on you and needed you.
And I'd get home and I'd have to like not touch anybody when I get home. Because this was before, right? This is all before the vaccine came out, right? Yeah. And like go into the downstairs restroom, take my clothes off, shower before I would interact with anybody, because everybody was scared. And I remember we had all the hot spots that had to be organized, and I brought a big old box of hot spots home, and everybody was like, "Why are you bringing these home?" And I was like, "They've got to be reprogrammed and organized."
Yes.
And they're like, "They have germs."
Oh my! I remember we would like spray our groceries.
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
And there was like, we've got to figure it out. We can't be scared of everything,
Yes. Okay, Claudia, you are incredible. We're gonna take a break.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sweaty. You're probably sweaty a little bit. And then we're gonna talk about how that turned into this.
Yeah.
Where we're sitting, literally, whose books?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, if you're listening, you probably just heard a really powerful, intense story. Before we get to the resiliency part, I just want to take a minute. Thank you for listening. This is where an ad would go. And if you're listening thinking, hey, I could be that person, please reach out. But I do want to remind you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Allison Mackalick. That's where we're going to have a ton of behind the scenes. You can see how this all comes together. And with that, let's jump back in. All right, we're back. We just had an incredibly powerful, vulnerable story. Thank you for sharing. I know that's not easy. It's even, I remember those times and all those feelings of just myself and just everything that you went through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, so let's talk about the lessons of resiliency that you learned and how you got to that, doing literally the hardest thing a person can do, I think, besides like, the first responders. Essentially, you were a first responder to creating this incredible community space to then help continue to serve, and kind of how you got to where we are today, which is literally in the lounge at Whose Books, which is now a staple of Oak Cliff. Like, walk us through that.
Yeah. So John and I always dreamed of having a bookstore, right? And it was kind of like when we retire, like, when we're in the last stage, it's going to be so cute. We're going to have this, but the more and more that I thought about it, like as in the later years towards in my principalship, and in education. There's this huge gap when it comes to reading achievement, right? That slowly is narrowing, but nothing really big is changing, right? The gap is huge. It's huge in our community. It's huge in Dallas. It's huge in Texas. It's huge in the country, right? And the more and more that I think about it, and I was thinking about it in partnership with this dream that I have of opening the bookstore, it was like, well, it's much more than what teachers are doing in the classroom. We have fabulous teachers who are doing amazing things and are really, really trying and doing great work, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
And so I started to peel things back and say, like, okay, so why, right? What's different between the students who really are excelling and have like this wonderful ability to connect with reading and how it just propels them in all other forms of education, right? Like me, like I had that wonderful experience. And so I started to think about it and I was like, well, it's really about the culture of reading, right? And how books and how literature is valued in a home and how it's shared. And when it's done right early on, then it builds this deep connection with personal growth, with discovery, with curiosity, with empathy. I mean, it just is like the foundation for so many great things, right? And then I started thinking about when I was growing up and how we didn't have access to bookstores here in the neighborhood. There was a few that were far kind of few and in between, but nothing that was long-term and consistent.
Yeah.
But we were fortunate that we had good libraries, and my parents always took us to the libraries. And we were fortunate that my parents had the agency and would take us to North Dallas or take us to the suburbs so that we could spend time in a bookstore and really kind of take in the magic of what that means, right? Of being able to discover and find things and just explore books and the stories that they hold. And books were valued, right? Like we were given books for Christmas, for our birthdays. There was inscriptions in them.
Love that.
We always, it was a bonding experience for us with our parents of like bedtime and, sharing books that they used to read when they were young. And so it was something that was just always really highly coveted and valued. I started thinking about in our community where we don't have access to bookstores, or we didn't, right? We didn't have access to bookstores, didn't have the culture of reading, and we didn't value the books, right? And then what's happening is then kids are going to school and then reading is being forced upon them versus something that they were really able to discover. And it happens in such a short amount of time. You could have a great kindergarten, first grade, second grade teacher where like the kids are like loving it and they're getting into it. But then standardized testing comes in at the third grade level and things start to very quickly change, right? And the attitude that kids have towards reading changes, the attitude that parents have towards reading changes. So all of this kind of was like going on in the back of my mind and thinking, okay, this has to matter, right?
Yes.
Like I have no empirical data, but I know, I know that the culture of reading that you have or do not have in a household has to impact, right? And the community and the school, et cetera. And so then I started doing research, right? And I started to find data that supported kind of like my hypothesis, right? And saying like, yes, not only that, there's data that looks at book deserts, right? And the number of books that are held, that are in a household. And when it reaches a certain point, then that's like a tipping point. And then data shows that households that have 100 or more books in their household, right?
Yes. I remember you telling me that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Just something I took for granted.
Yeah, because I mean, for us, it's a privilege. I mean, it's just something that we have, but it's a privilege, really, if you think about it. And so then what the data shows is households that have 100 books or more in their household, then you have higher completion rate of graduation, higher economic mobility, higher job retention rates. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? So I started to look, I was like, okay, well, where do we stand? Like, where does our community stand, right? So I was looking up Oak Cliff, and we're smack in the book desert, which is also a food desert, which is also a health desert, which is also like all the other things, right? And then I started to compare that map to the redlining practices of our city. And the redlining practices were when banks would decide what communities were good enough to invest in or not.
Decided?
Banks did. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cute. Okay.
Uh-huh. And they decided, primarily, they ranked the neighborhoods based on the race of the people who lived in the neighborhoods, right?
When did this happen?
It's for decades, like decades.
Got it.
And we're yes,
got it.
Absolutely.
Got it.
And so when you look at that, and you look at the redlining practices map, and then you look at the maps that outline where food deserts, book deserts, all of those things on, I mean, it's almost a complete overlay, right? Wow. Very, very little difference. And so I started thinking, okay, so these are the lasting, right, impact of the systemic racism in these practices that have carried on, right, and how it impacts the community.
Wow.
And so then for me, it was like, okay, we are going to open this bookstore. It's not this cute little dream anymore, right?
Yes.
This is something that we're going to do. And we're going to do it with the mission of helping to eradicate book deserts and to build a reading culture. Because I truly believe that if you create a community that values, well, one that has equitable access to books, right? And represents diversity within them. And then you also create what I call positive reading experiences, moments that kind of prime the brain with like, oh yeah, I really do I like this. This is a good feeling, right?
Yeah. I'm learning.
Yeah. That it's going to have impact, and it's going to have lasting impact. And so we got to it as I was in like the final years of my principalship and still kind of, working through some really hard things. This was kind of my creative outlet to research and like look into and see. And I started to say, okay, what would it take to make it happen, right? Yeah. And could I do this? And a lot of things pointed into the direction of like, it's not very smart. It's not a lucrative business. The likelihood of you getting investors, right? The cost of the physical space itself, right? Like, not only will this be challenging, it will be extremely risky and challenging, right?
Hey.
But, that didn't matter.
Yeah. Can I just say, I remember when you showed me your business plan, and we went through it, and it was impressive, of course. And then like a week later, you said, oh, nope, I'm doing it on my own. And I was like, amazing. That's even better. Like, but now, like, listening to your story and everything you've gone through, like, of course you were like, I don't need investors. I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And you did it, and you're doing it. Yeah. And then just to watch whose books like change in the other location. Yep. And now this location. And now the nonprofit. Yeah. I mean, okay, so. And it's scary as hell. It is, but it's amazing. Super scary. But think about it. You've done all the hard things. Like, I was just listening, like, on your journey, it's like it's almost prepared you for this. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think one of the things is like, what is the absolute worst thing? And John would and I would go back and forth. There'd be days he's like, well, no, I don't think this is too risky. Show me like how you think it's going to work, right? And then I'd show him, and then he's like, okay. And then like a week later, he's like, no. Like, really, we still have kids and there's kids at the house. Like, we have others in college. Like it was like the financial setback or ramifications were going to be huge, right? Like if it didn't work. And so I was like, I need to at least try. Yeah. I need to at least try. And so I put in my resignation, and he was not happy. And we went back and forth. There was times where he was like really happy and like, I'm proud of you, And then there was other times where he was like, I don't know. And to me, it was like, what is the worst that could happen? The absolute worst that can happen is that I go into debt. So what?
Like, and by that time I had come to this idea that money doesn't really exist. It's just like, it's this concept, and, it's here today. It could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And so I was like, what is the worst? Like the worst is that I could go into debt.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'd go back to work.
Yeah.
And I'd make money. Yeah. And then I'd get out of debt.
And then if you didn't, you'd always regret not doing it.
Right. Like I needed to try.
Yeah.
I needed to try. And so I put it in. Oddly enough, after I put in my resignation, right? Like the last day, they're like, oh, we have this promotion for you.
Of course. Okay, that is so funny because I've learned along the way, like when you want to do something and like the universe is like, let me give you this one last test.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, I'm locked in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I told him, he was my ex-boss at the time, and I was like, no. I said, when I asked you 2 years ago what it would take to be promoted, you said it would take X, Y, and Z. I did it. And I was not promoted, right?
Yes. And now I'm leaving.
And now I'm leaving. And they're like, well, just sleep on it and tell me in the morning. And I was like, I don't need to sleep on it. The answer is no. Then it was like, well, go talk to your husband, sleep on it, and then come back in the morning. And I was like, I don't need to do that.
Listen, I'm about to go open this bad A bookstore. Get out of my face. Here we go.
And so we didn't like, whatever. Figured it out, tried to get investors and, get a loan. And it was a lot of pushback and a lot of, well, you don't have this or you don't have that. And as a woman of color, you get so exhausted of all of those things always coming up all the time. When I hear other counterparts that are like, oh no, I just went in and got it approved, signed, and so it was really, really frustrating. And so at that point, I was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to justify. And it's very, I don't know, it feels very, not vulnerable, like exposed to have somebody just go through every single piece of your financial history and what your plan is. And like, just to kind of belittle you in the process, right? And so I wasn't going to take it. I was not going to put myself through that. And so in a moment of frustration, enlightenment, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, madness, all of
the above,
I was like, I'm cashing in my retirement and I'm doing it by myself.
Oh, hell
so,
yes.
Until I got taxed.
Okay.
And then I was like, Oh,
okay.
So, but whatever.
Okay, well,
there's a payment plan for that.
I feel like we could have an entire new episode of like the bookstore, and I really hope you open up your own podcast and then talk about it because everything that's incredible. Before we wrap, though, how many years now has Whose Books been open, and what's the future for Whose Books?
So we just celebrated 3-year anniversary.
3 years?
It's been awesome. And it has been a journey, and it still is a journey, right? Everybody talks about what does growth look like for y'all. People have asked us if we would franchise, like all these crazy things. And I'm like, no, growth for us is sustainability, right? Like that's what we want to be able to keep Whose Books in the neighborhood for as long as possible. We have started to see kids grow up with us, families kind of shift. Your family too. So we want to continue that, right? And then we just celebrated a year anniversary of our literary nonprofit, which is Arco. And it works hand in hand with Whose Books to help create book access. And so in the past year, we've gifted over 2,000 books into the community. We've hosted over 100 literary events for all ages that are either free or low cost. And I really, truly feel like we are making an impact in what reading culture looks like, feels like in our community. And it's been beautiful. And so for us, that's the future, is like sustainability, right? Like how can we I don't need more square footage. I don't need, another location. I just need this to be able to exist for our community. And so that's our goal.
Okay. Well, I said it at the beginning, you still are, of course, probably cemented in my life, one of the smartest, most inspirational, I'm gonna get emotional, women that I know. Thank you for coming on. I loved your story. I loved going in depth and just having the time for us to just dive deep. Yeah. And I love this place. I think it's a staple. That's why I chose to literally record this project
and
here.
And we love that we can offer the space like this to our community.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm going to put in all the links and all the things and every single thing about Whose Books and you. And thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of When the Dog Bites with myself, Allison Makalik. These stories are real and these people are vulnerable and it's really impactful. And I hope that you walked away feeling inspired and knowing that when something like maybe your own dog bite happens, that you can face it with resiliency and know that you can do hard things. Tune in soon. We'll be back. Thank you.